I'm Tom Butler. I'm Chief Executive of the International Council on Metals and Mining, and I live in London. Well, my transition was a long time ago because I left the army in '89, and I've been through a number of jobs between then and now. Um, and I had 5 years in the army after graduating. Um, and when I came out, rather to my annoyance or disappointment, there was no recognition given to anyone coming out of the army. So I had to basically start from scratch and apply for graduate jobs, which in one way was frustrating, but on the other hand, once I got the graduate job, I found it a lot easier than everyone else because I had 5 years experience of leading people in teams. I went straight into a job where after a little bit of technical training, I was leading teams, and having done that for 5 years, I found it rather easier than some of my colleagues. And in fact, on my course, I joined Schlumberger after the army, and 11 out of 16 made it through the course. And the ones who were fired because of, they were organizationally challenged. They had difficulty interacting with people. They weren't going to be good in a team environment. I think people had a very stereotyped view of people who sort of coming out of the army, and you were expected to go off and be a estate agent or a stockbroker, and use your connections and network. And anyone who wanted to do something more interesting, they just looked at you and said, "Well, you're competing against people who've crunched spreadsheets or who understand numbers, or have sort of had more relevant experience." And I didn't really, I applied for some quite odd jobs because I quickly realized I wasn't getting anything mainstream. People didn't really, or perhaps still don't really relate to what the army does. And people think that the army is all about, you receive orders and you give orders, and actually it's, if you're leading a team, you can't really run a successful team by giving orders. It's all about leading from the front, consensus building, leading by example, and carrying people along with you, not by commanding them, but by leading them, which is a bit different. I think I knew that, or I had learnt that, but trying to disabuse people of their conceptions about the army or misconceptions about the army, I quickly realised wasn't really worth it. They'd much rather, that you live up to the stereotype. Well, I think there's a lot more recognition of the army these days, mainly because there've been, so many conflicts in the last 20 years. And so the army's been much more in the public eye. And a number of organizations recognize the leadership value that the army brings and the organizational ability. And I think you have to try to explain what you've done in civilian terms, in terms of, not obviously it's no use saying, well, I led a battalion. You have to try and put it into a civilian context, but without trying so hard that it starts to sound very forced. And I think the other advice is, play to your strengths, and perhaps be honest that you expect that there would be some adjustment time needed, but that you bring a lot of value. And if you're going to a big company, that you ask them to give you some time to find the right fit and to adjust as you come out of the military environment.